Welcome to the Life Chat Podcast, seeking the truth with Derek Powell, navigating you through. Every Wednesday night, new topics ignite. Join the journey, let's take flight. Bringing insights that change our view. Derek's voice, clear and true. Tune in each week, discover new light. Life Chat Podcast, reach a new height.
Hello, everybody, and welcome again to Life Chat Podcast. Thank you for joining me tonight. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to be a part of tonight's conversation and tonight's topic with our special guest, Ms. Jordie Clark, and we will be discussing the indirect effects of addiction. And the reason why I feel though this topic fits so well with my guest tonight is because of the fact that my guest is not an addict, but we all have dealt with somebody that we know, somebody that we love, somebody that we're always interacting with that may be addicted, and we never discuss, never really hear or talk about how those the people's the addicts' actions and behaviors affect us as people and as society as a whole. So tonight, I will be introducing my very special guest. I bring it on the screen right now from backstage. Yes, she's backstage, y'all, with the curtains. About to pull the curtains back with Miss Jordie Clark.
Hello,
how you doing, Miss Jordie?
Good. How are you doing?
Hello. I'm well. So, since you're here and you made it, and everything is crystal clear, we wanted to jump right into the your little bit of information about you, who you are, where you're from, and elaborate a little bit about the topic.
Absolutely. So most people watching this most likely know me as Jordie, and I'm originally from the Eastern Shore, specifically Sussex County, Delaware. It's where I grew up. And then I went to college in Philly and then graduated, came back home, and I was there for a while and worked at the local station, WMDT, which I recently wrapped up my time there. And I'm now actually in Virginia Beach. So it's been a really fun experience, and I'm at a new station. So yeah, I am thriving. I'm living my dream, but I will say I can definitely speak to this topic tremendously. And it's not been something I've been very open about because it's not necessarily my story to tell, but like you said, indirect effects of addiction. I think you grow up, and while you might have experienced that with someone in your life, you start to kind of see it play out in your life of how you react to certain things or, traumas that you grew up with, knowing someone with addiction that was close to you. And so I think it's just a topic that I feel so comfortable now to be able to speak on and realize that it kind of helps break that stigma where it doesn't have to be taboo to say like, oh, I had someone in my life that was an addict. Like let's talk about it.
And like now it's not sadly, but it's reality that's it's become the norm now. Because the effects, the whole situation with addiction is so prevalent now throughout not just our small communities here, but it's a global situation, a global issue. And I think, like you said earlier, a lot of people don't even discuss it because I don't know if it's just ignorance to the fact or the fact that they don't want to expose it, because they'll be exposing themselves. But I did want to bring something up on the screen. I had a couple small little topics subtopics I want to break that we can discuss, and maybe we can bring a little more insight for people that may not have the information. So maybe people can read it or check it out later, or you can just elaborate on it now. But this is one here: the indirect effects of communities, indirect effects on communities and society. It says increased crime rate. Communities with high addiction rates often see a rise in crime, particularly drug-related offenses and theft. And can you elaborate on this from your personal or professional standpoint?
Yes, definitely. Honestly, I feel like I can from both standpoints. So, talking about crime rates and drug-related offenses, for instance, I mean, that's something that we dive into a lot as journalists. And for me, I had the privilege of being able to highlight, resources like yourself, but also other like entities in the area that are addressing those issues, because we are looking at an issue when it comes to addiction as like this just overarching, like it's a choice to be addicted to something, which
Mm.
I feel like now the stigma is getting to, like, I think we're starting to realize it's not like it's not a choice. Like, you don't want to drive your life into this like abyss of nothingness. That's never like when you take your first drink, you take your first, smoke of something. Like, you, that's not, 9 times out of 10 is not what's going on in your head. And the after effect,
Nobody wakes up and says, "I want to be an addict."
yeah, I mean, like, I've never had that conversation with someone, like, it might be an in the moment decision. It might just be something for fun. And unfortunately, people don't realize that these addictive qualities, like, there's a reason that people get addicted. And while I'm not a doctor and not professional, but I will say the things that have these addictive qualities, like, there's a reason where, and sometimes it's a personality thing of how you can be quickly addicted to something. I mean, let's use sugar, for instance. I'm like, how many people can say
Hmm.
like, "Dang, I put a bag of jelly beans or something, I can't stop eating it." As much as like that's on a smaller scale, I'm like, it's not necessarily like you want to be addicted to it. It is.
Yes.
You get
Yes.
it. Like, it can happen. Like, what you're addicted to, it's a brain chemistry thing, and that's why the stigma. Like, you need those coping skills, and if you don't have them, then you might fall victim to these things that seem okay in the moment to help you cope and get through things, but or just for the sake of, oh, it's just recreational, it's just fun. One thing can lead to the other, and then now you're years down the road into this abyss that you can't think back to the time where you're like, I don't remember picking up this substance of choice and thinking this is where I want my life to head. And you don't
Mhm.
think that. And I don't. And the thing is, if it doesn't affect you personally, it is hard to speak to it. And for someone who has been indirectly affected, I'm sure as a kid I didn't understand why this person was choosing a substance over being, in the family, until you get older and you understand, like, they have issues that they weren't dealing with. And so now that's their life. And while I'm not going to make it or let it affect me to a point where I'm like, and that's the thing, we let these things affect and you never address it. And while I can't speak for that person, I can speak on my behalf and I do my own healing, because while I might not be the one picking up the substance, I'm getting the after effects of it that can be
Mhm.
just as bad.
And since you mentioned that part, we as being an addict of substances, I never, a long time ago, I didn't realize how much my behavior was affecting my family. I just thought, it was just, I'm hurting. I was hurting myself. I didn't really think about the prison time I was doing. My family was actually being affected by that as well. I didn't think about they had to take time out of their day to make a visit and or to go to the post office. Not things that they had to do, but things that they did because of their love for me. But they took time out of their normal routine to accommodate me
Mhm.
in that situation. Um, Staying with family members, coming in all hours of the night, affecting them in those ways, then worrying about where I was at, was I okay, was I safe? So
Mhm.
I never really thought about those things, and I'm sure that other people that are in that situation had the same feeling. Now, once we reach this side,
Mhm.
but a lot of times as the addict, we put all these things on our family members and loved ones, and not realizing how the stress that they go through as well. So have you found that you had to deal with different stresses and different ways of coping or find new coping skills in dealing
Mhm.
with the situation?
Yeah, no, absolutely. As you were saying that, I was thinking about, I mean, we as people, we're all chasing a high of some sort, whether that's our career path, whether that's money, i.e., career, whether that's, chasing a person, whether it's chasing substances, whether we're all looking for that, because when we feel good, like, that's what we all want to feel good. I don't think anyone can necessarily disagree with that. I don't think anyone's like, nah, I just want to feel bad for the rest of my life. Like, nobody, you want to feel good and you find ways that feels good. And so that can be even when it comes to loving an addict, for instance. You love those high moments with them. You love those moments where they are like their best self, or where they're maybe the sober version of them is what you love. And as someone who will love an addict, whether it's a family member or your partner, you are like chasing that because you want to fix them. If you love them and care about them, there's part of you that's like, I want to fix them. I want to help. I want to see, and you have to take that off your shoulders. And I think I carried that growing up as a kid. I didn't realize it until I was older and could reflect and work through with a therapist my trauma from, having an addict in my family, and realizing that like you start putting that self on you, because I am somebody who, I'm very empathetic, and I'm like, I can look at beyond the substance, beyond the choices they're making, and be like, there's a why to this. Like, why are you hurting so bad that you feel like you have to choose a substance over me, or choose a substance over our family? And you're like chasing that. And as much as they're dealing with their own trauma with why they have to they chase this substance, and now they're in this addiction, you're like right along with them, technically like on the path, like right next to them, because you're trying so hard to pull them back, but like you're not helping yourself either. And you have to learn, and that's hard when you have an addict in your life, of like balancing being a support system, but also not being a crutch, and being like, I'm
Mhm.
here to lean on, but like you can't depend on this, because there comes a point where you have to do your own self reflection, and you have to be like, my family loves me. What do I need to do? But it's not just going to happen in a day. And that's like, I think
Yeah.
especially after I had my own child, and I started to see that like, I can't, if I can protect him from seeing these types of behaviors and qualities, I will, because he deserves something better than I had. And I'm not mad at it. I'm not somebody who holds grudges. I don't like hate my upbringing, because it taught me a lot, and it taught me to be empathetic, to be able to have these types of conversations and not have this like hatred in my heart, like, addicts, they make this choice. Like, I can't, like, that makes my stomach just like icked out. I do not like that behavior, because I'm like,
Yeah.
trust me, 9 times out of 10, nobody chooses that. But, if finding a balance of how to be supportive, but also like letting them just kind of being there in the background. It's a hard balance. And I think that's, again, one of the indirect effects of it is finding your place in all of that. Like, how do I be supportive without, aiding in it? Or how do I be supportive without completely neglecting them? Like, it's a fine line, and it's difficult.
Being supportive without being overbearing.
Hmm.
Because a lot of times people that are not haven't dealt with the issue, haven't been personally involved, or the active addict or the user, they don't really understand the obsession and the compulsion that we go through as a user. The obsession, just the thought of it, the thought of that feeling on a regular,
Hmm.
on a daily basis. Sometimes it could be it could be a day long process.
Hmm.
Just that feeling of remembering what it was like, the reminiscent of the whole atmosphere, just being in the atmosphere. Person, I can speak on that because me personally, I just sometimes now, I'm still early. I'm still 10 months. I'm only 10 months clean right now, but
Hmm.
still, the thoughts still come and still reminisce about the actions that were going on and the feelings
Hmm.
that I had, you know. But I also remember the feelings that, the consequences that came along with it, and
Yep.
how much I would lose right now, and the indirect effects, once again, the indirect effects of how would my children feel, how would my sisters feel,
Hmm.
how am I going to explain all this stuff if I do go back out and use, if I make it, because now we know that a lot of people are not coming back from using now, no
Hmm.
matter what the substance is.
Yep.
Also, I want to bring up another piece here: impact on friendships. It says addiction can cause friends to feel worried. Just the people that are in our lives that worry about us on a constant basis. When we're out in the streets, um, or even if we're just sitting in the house and we're using, just people worrying about our well-being and our health and our whole thought processes. They're worried, they're anxious, disappointed, and because maintaining a friendship, it says maintaining a friendship with someone battling addiction can be challenging, as it often leads to emotional strain. And we just talked about that, the emotional strain we put on people that we love,
Hmm.
um, and emotional strain that, such as yourself, people don't that haven't struggled with the addiction, with the physical addiction, disrupted social dynamics, and challenges in providing support. So is there any, if you can pick one of these, or can you elaborate on these three, and
Mhm.
have they played a role in your life?
No, absolutely. Personality, respecting shared activities, social interactions. Honestly, yes, because I think for someone who's like indirectly affected, you almost start to like look for red flags in future friendships or future relationships or future partnerships in general because it's almost like I don't want to go as far as saying like PTSD, but like you do feel that trauma, you do feel those
That's what
things. So like,
it
y-
really is. That's what it
yeah,
is.
like you're more sensitive to like certain behaviors that might be associated with it. They might not be the same, but they're similar enough that like it'll make me uncomfortable. And like I've noticed that in my friendships, my relationships, and while um I can't say that I've got like this abundance of like friends or family members that have gone through addiction, but like the impact that I did have growing up affected me so deeply that now I like am very analytical when I see those types of behaviors in like my partner and friends and whatnot. And so I feel like it's definitely you kind of carry that with you, and whether it's good or bad, hence therapy, because then you need to start being like, what is healthy of a person, what are normal things that you can struggle with, what are red flags I need to look out for. And it's hard. And then if you are still in that person's life who battled addiction, then you're almost like, again, like they're still their support person of being like, do I need to help you? Like, what do you need to look out for? Like, what do I need to protect you from so that you don't feel triggered? It's just a tricky situation. Again, the more we talk about it, it's great, and that's why it's good to have stuff like this, because those conversations, they're so hard to have. It's hard to like
Yeah.
say I don't know what to do, because like, why do people relapse? Like, I always use it as like, we're all 9 times out of 10 addicted to our phones in one way or another. Like, it's
You
very,
better
if
believe it.
you like, if you're not, more power to you. You're blessed, good for you. But like, let's be real here. You get an itch. Like, yeah, as much as you're like, I could put my phone down for a week. No, you can't. And as much
No.
like, no way. There's no way you can. And not just because like, well, I work or this, my kids. I'm like, yeah, like there's a need for it. Like, even when you're not talking to someone you need to, you're still on your phone. So like
When my phone is
that
on charger, I'm going through troubles. Trust me.
Yes, yes, and, like, just that, like, instant feeling of, like, that itch, like, "Ah, I need to check my phone, I need to check my phone," or, like, if you're, like, scrolling and scrolling mindlessly, I'm almost like, not that I'm someone who's battled addiction, but I feel like I know enough, I experience enough, I'm like, multiply that by, like, 10, and imagine someone who was struggling with that, and what are you using your phone to cope from? Are you bored? Are you just genuinely sad and you need to, like, change it up or something? Like, imagine like 9 out of 10, like substance, like we said, can be used for just like fun and recreation. It gets out of hand and trickles down, or you do use it to cope because you're like, I just need a drink because I've had a stressful week. And then it leads to another drink and leads to another drink. And then you start to notice yourself, you're like, why can't I stop? Because like now there's this itch that you've scratched with a substance. And if you don't have good coping skills, then you're going to keep reaching for some that's not going to help you cope in the long run. But again,
Yeah.
like that's easy to say as someone like who's sober minded, but in the moment, I know I'm like, I don't always have great coping skills. Like there, like there, we're all people struggling. Like no one here is about to be like, "Ah, I don't have those struggles." Like you're lying. You're lying. Like there's one way or the other. It's just your substance of choice, whether it's actual like substances or whether it's phone, whether it's relationships, whether it's going somewhere you shouldn't. Like there's so many different things that you could be addicted to. It's just for the sake of this conversation, we're talking about substances. So it's like
Substances.
apply that to just because you don't choose to use drugs doesn't mean that you don't have an addiction to something. Like it's a mindset.
If it's something that's taken away from your normal routine, something that's taken away from the benefit of your life, then yeah,
Mhm.
it can be it's an issue. It can be an issue.
Yep.
I think a lot of times I mentioned this. I was talking about this the other day with somebody that a lot of times we think that if we buy something that we can afford it.
Hmm.
Not true. Just
Hmm.
because you buy something doesn't mean you can afford it. You go out and
Yes.
buy a brand new car right now, and within that month, you're backed up on the bills, and you can't make those bills because you bought that.
Hmm.
Now it's the
Hmm.
issue, but that might be another conversation.
Yeah.
But yeah. But we're gonna go back to the indirect effects, and you
Mhm.
mentioned about your child, about your your son
Mhm.
earlier. Okay, so we're gonna go to children. Um, growing up now in this society, today's society, children from toddlers are seeing, people laid out in the streets. They're seeing um, drug activity, drug transactions go on,
Mhm.
and they may not even have to deal with that at home, but seeing that in the street and asking those questions, kids are so innocent and they're so straightforward with it. Whether
Yeah.
it's a statement or a question,
Mhm.
mommy, dad, what is that? Why are they doing that? What are they? And these are the type of conversations that people we need to start figuring out how to have with kids, with children,
Mhm.
without exposing them, more than they're already exposed.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Um, yeah, even the video games.
Mhm.
So video games even have those activities going on in them now.
Mhm.
Um, but just being a child now, you know, they're seeing a whole lot of things that I know I didn't see these. I didn't see a lot of that stuff because I'm a senior citizen now. I'm a little older, but I really didn't see a
Mhm.
lot of that stuff when I was growing up. And so I really wouldn't understand it from their eyes if if I was never the
Mhm.
person that the
Mhm.
child actually saw in the street
Yeah.
drinking or smoking crack or making a drug transaction. And that's
Mhm.
why I always say now I want to be a part of the solution instead of part of the problem.
Mhm.
But with the children's side, since you do have a child, uh, how do you have those conversations with your child?
Um, I mean, like you said, very straightforward, and my son will definitely like ask a question, like if he sees something. Um, I mean, I get it, it is hard for me. It is definitely hard. While I don't have necessarily that person actively in my life, whether or not they're still addicted or not, for me, as you're saying that, I'm like, I was the kid that saw that in my house, addiction, and saw the effects at a really early age that I shouldn't have seen a lot of things I saw. And I know kids who had it worse and saw, not that I'm going to put drugs or substances like on a tier of like what's worse and whatnot, but like
Yeah.
for me, it's still regardless. Like there's different effects of it, and I know I was triggered when this person was still showing those qualities after I've had my son and, tried to come back into their lives. And I put my foot down as someone who was like remembering being a little kid and seeing this and disassociating. That's where I learned my really bad coping skill of disassociating when I was younger because I like have like parts of my childhood that I blacked out because I'm like, I just at the time was like, that was my way of coping because no one was helping me as a kid, being like, I don't think this 5, 6, 7, 8-year-old should be seeing this, And I'm not mad about it. It's something I've dealt with through, therapy. But let's just say when I saw that again as an adult now with my child and being like, I have a choice now. I didn't have a choice but to see it and experience it. And I don't hate you. I don't hold hate in my heart, but you have to heal on your own. And so I'm very protective of my child when it comes to that. But I'm also a lot more open because I'm like, because we didn't have those conversations growing up, it was like, it is what it is. Pray and cope. Yeah, praying is fine, but you also need therapy. And I'm a big proponent of that. I've grown up in the church and I've always been, everyone needs to find their path, whatever their walk is, whatever they believe in. But I know me personally, absolutely pray if that's what you believe, but you also need earthly therapy too. You also need to be able to cope and learn healthy coping skills. And so I'm very much like when my son was ready to have a conversation, let's talk about it. Let's chat because you need to be a person outside of my home and you're going to see these things. Like I cannot protect you from seeing it. I can protect you in my household for sure. And mama gonna put her foot down when it comes to that. But outside of the home, I can't pretend that you're not life is gonna life. That's my favorite
Just
saying.
gonna
Like
do it
life is gonna life. So like I need to help you be able to navigate it with or without me with you. So
from
let's just say when
videos, from
like now
videos to music.
yes, now I have a bonus son who was 13 who, he definitely sees that stuff in games and the music he listens to, the music all these kids listen to. GTA is pretty much banned in my house, but let's be honest, kids are playing it. It is what it is. I'm not sitting here being like, let's ban GTA. Like, as much as it's the game and stuff, kids got to start being able to separate reality and like what's cool and what's not and stuff. And that's hard. I will say middle school, that's a hard age because you're the sponge and you're intaking and you're looking at what's cool and who's this and who's that and these rappers. And not that I don't sit here and listen to rap music, like not what I'm saying, but it is good for parents to have those conversations so they understand, like, we're not here to glorify this. That's fine if that's their choice. I get it. Catchy tune, you're singing, you rapping, whatever. I don't care. I need you to understand, like, the context of what you're listening to, the context of what you're seeing and saying, so that you can separate it for yourself. So you don't fall into being like, what's wrong with that? He's with his friend. Middle schoolers, I just, that's a whole other beast. That's a whole other podcast.
Yeah. I know you also mentioned therapy. If I'm not mistaken, it was like 3 or 4 times.
Yeah.
And you mentioned like not just the spiritual part where going to church and praying and these type of things, but you mentioned actually going to a therapist or have them come to you, however it's done. Has that been a solution for you? And what is that a component that you would offer for other people? Is that what your way of explaining to other people that they need to, that we need to seek other forms of help?
100%. I think you have to also find what works for you. And I think there is an abundance of resources. I don't think it's a lack of resources anymore. I think you and I have spoke about that. There's plenty of resources out there, but it's the connectivity, like that bridge to like kind of meet people where they are, but also like be something that feels open, because I feel like the stigma around mental health and therapy is like, oh, you're going to a therapist?
Yeah.
It's like, can we move past that now? Can we all move past that? Because it is normal to be able to talk to someone about what you're going through. And I understand, like, it's great to have a support system, whether it's like you have a best friend or whether your parents or that's totally fine. This is awesome. And if anything, this is, like we had said back when we did our story, like a bridge to open those conversations for people to feel more open, to be like, let me see what resources are out there. How can I help? And I've done so many stories about those resources because it's like, why is this not highlighted? Why is this not being like in the public's eye? Because the whole idea of like therapy, like that's part of the stigma that we have to break, because it's sad that people have this like, I don't need to go to a therapist. Like, I'm fine. You're not fine. And it's okay to not be fine.
People will say that. People will say, I don't need to go see a therapist. I don't need to talk about my problems with nobody else. But you'll sit with somebody that and you'll gossip with them all day long about the same situation instead of talking to somebody that you can completely dump everything on. And that's what they're there for. And they're actually going to give you feedback and offer you advice and offer you solutions to the problem. And I just wanted to say that. But go ahead and finish.
Yeah, because it's not like this, this idea that like therapists can be like, so you're clinically crazy and that's what they're here for. That's not what they're there to do. Like, that's fine if like, you want to talk about like medication when it comes to mental health. That's great. But like, it's supposed to be paired with mental health therapy. It's not just like, here, this pill makes you happy and you feel better. No, like that's supposed to be like an aid as you go through your healing journey. Some people need it forever. Yes. It's just, and that's the thing. Like, is there like one size fits all? Absolutely not. Is there like one solution to fix the problem of addiction? There's never really going to be, but we want less and less people to deal like that have to deal with it. But it's reality. Like, we can't erase, drugs. We can't erase alcohol. We cannot erase those things. That's just not realistic. We have to learn, how do we cope with these things that are happening? How do we fight this stigma? How do we go through these things? And it's a process. And I think people have got to grow through what they go through, as much as that's redundant and you see it on signs and memes and whatnot. But I'm like, it's serious. Like, that's fine if you're battling addiction, but like, that's why these conversations happen. That's why there's resources. And this whole, again, if people aren't affected by it, don't see it around them, they got to stop this. Like, it doesn't exist if you don't see it. Like, I'm like, just because it's not happening around you doesn't mean it's not happening at all. And I'm a big proponent of that, because I deal with that a lot in the news of like, whether it's, officials, I'll just be very vague, like officials not realizing there's a problem going on like in their district, being like, where, when? Not in your neighborhood, but other neighborhoods this is happening, and
And because you said it, you said not their neighborhood, but just because you don't see it, don't mean it's not happening. You know your neighbor. You don't know what your neighbor's doing behind closed doors. You know, I think, and that's a key point because a lot of people try to disguise things as something else, or try to cover things up and hide things, or just block things out. And without bringing things to light and exposing things, we're never really gonna advance. We're never gonna move past this situation. But I did have one more question for you,
yeah.
Jordie. I know that you won't be able, I wouldn't expect you to mention certain things, but with your profession as being in the news, being a news anchor, um, you see a lot of things go on when you're doing your stories, and you hear a lot of different things, right? And the effects that some families go through because of the addiction and trauma. We're not just talking about um, we can talk about different things, not just substance. We can talk about trauma. We can talk about incarceration, homelessness. All these things play a big part in everyday life, and they all have effects. So when you see these things, where's the whole the whole circle? What's the whole connection with the effects and the result, the solutions? How do you feel as though what would be your solution to these situations if you had a solution to offer?
I had it's such a loaded question because I feel like I said, it's not a one size fit all, not one solution. However, for me as a professional talker, clearly, I think those those conversations are crucial, and I think transparency is like a huge part to all of this is being transparent. I get it. It is not fun to talk about the fact that you struggle. We are humans and we are flawed, and I think we have to embrace that. And it's hard because we are trained in society in our cultures across the world, like not just like it's not an American problem, it's a people problem, it's a mankind. We are flawed human beings and we're just trying to find ways to cope and work through things. And we are taught to like hide our flaws and hide our issues and not be so apparent that there's something wrong with us, that we are taught that if there's something's wrong with us, like we're not perfect, then like not gonna cut it. And that whole idea, it's like, how long has mankind been on this earth? Why are we still under this impression that like we can't mess up, we can't have our issues? And I think we are having great conversations to address that. I think it's like we know it's a thing, but how do we move past it and work through it? And I think, like I said, that's where transparency comes into play, and being honest with one another about it, and being honest with, groups, and being, dude, I struggle. The other day, I almost picked up a bottle because I was so upset. Or the other day, I almost did this. Like, the moment you say it and you almost like you bring it to light, then you can address it. You cannot address things that are in the dark. You can't see them. It's like what I've always kind of lived by. I'm like, you keep it in the dark, it's just going to build up and build up because you're not seeing it. You're like, if I keep hiding it, it's not there. And for me, I can speak on that because when it comes to like issues and hurt, I will bury it. Like, I'm fine. I'm fine person. Anyone, my friends, my family knows I'm good. I'm fine. I'm fine. Why do you keep asking me? I'm fine. Until I implode because I keep just like dumping on myself and internalizing it. And for me, I had to get to a really low point in my life emotionally to address those types of issues. And like, that is across the board. I'm like, we're all struggling. I don't care if you're like, my life's really not that bad. Okay, that's fine. But then why can't you be like someone to talk to, a voice of reason, for someone else to be transparent? Like, you shouldn't have this, like, because your life is seemingly perfect, that you almost like cut yourself off to people who are like, okay, well, I'm not on that same boat, sister. So like, we can't meet in the middle. And I'm like, it's going to take work from like people who are this so-called have this stigma of like, I need to be perfect, and people who are like, yo, I'm flawed and I don't know how to say that out loud, and we got to be transparent across the board. I think as people, I think we need to be all honest with ourselves. We all need a humble pie, like a big old humble pie. We are all struggling in one way or another, whether you choose a substance, whether you choose a phone, a person, whatever your choice to cope. I can tell you 9 times out of 10, it's probably not the proper way to cope with something. Even a psychologist that like I know was like, girl, like I struggle to cope with things. And they're like, they clinically know how to get through it. So it just, like I said, be humble and transparent. Like that's a big part of it. It's okay to admit it. It is okay to say, I struggle sometimes, whatever the capacity is, because that's kind of how you start to have those conversations. What do I do to get help? What do I do to find the resources I need? How do I be a support person for somebody? How do I help my family member through addiction? Because like we said, the indirect effects of addiction, if I had those resources that I knew about as a kid, I mean, if anything, I just would have figured it out sooner, but it's okay because my struggles have brought me here so I can talk to people and I can do stories where we shed light on this. So again, just transparency and humbleness. Those are my keys.
So those are that would be your solutions.
Yes. Yep.
Okay. Transparency and humbleness.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I wasn't expecting to hear the humility part, humbleness part, but hey, okay. But I just wanted to say, this episode was, to me, it was a little bit different than a lot of the other episodes because of just the topic itself, because it didn't really focus on the addict themselves. It focused on the intent was to be focused on everything around the addict, from the people to the environment to home, everything. But as we all know, the indirect effects, from if I use right now, if I get high, if I go to prison, if I commit a crime, everything around me is going to be affected. Not include myself, but everything around me, everybody around me, including my family and friends, will definitely be affected. So this is a topic that we all can relate to, whether you use or not. I just want to say thank you again, Jordie, for having me on. I probably should have mentioned this earlier for those people that didn't, that weren't really abreast of how we met.
Mm-hmm.
Come on, Jordie. I want you to explain this, Jordie.
So at my old station, I used to have a segment called The Bright Side, where I would highlight anything good and or unique going on in the community. And I found out about Derek's Life Chat podcast. And I think I really love to turn like something where it's like a story about, recovering addicts and addiction. And I'm like, yeah, because we are finding a new resource and connectivity in the community to help people struggling with addiction, help families who are struggling with addiction to have these conversations, be transparent, and tell people like it's okay if you're struggling. Like there are other people just like you, and people feel alone in their journey, as I'm sure you've experienced at some point, of just feeling so alone. And while you go to, you might go to meetings or you experience these different resources, I think at some point you still have this feeling of like, but I am alone in this. And I think we all feel that at some point in our life, whether we're struggling with addiction or not. And so I just thought it was just such a unique take on trying to help people who are also in that same boat with you and other families.
Absolutely. And I wasn't excited when you did the episode, when you did the interview with me back in January. I was elated because it was I felt like I reached my goal, but there's a whole lot more to do, not just for me, but from us and from everybody, from all communities. But I just want to say thank you again. Thank you for being transparent. Thank you for being on the episode for tonight. And I would like you to stay on after the episode, but talk about a couple more things. But appreciate you for being on for tonight, and thank you everybody else for watching tonight, and thank you for everybody that will be watching later on YouTube. And please do not forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe to Life Chat Podcast. Thank you. Be safe. Enjoy your night. Be blessed.
Welcome to the Life Chat Podcast, seeking the truth with Derek Powell, navigating you through. Every Wednesday night, new topics ignite. Join the journey, let's take flight. Bringing insights that change our view. Derek's voice, clear and true. Tune in each week, discover new light.